Okay, so back in 1935, this absolutely blistering critique of war gets published. It's called War is a Racket. And let me tell you, its core argument is just as controversial today as it was nearly 100 years ago.
The central claim of the book is brutally simple. It's this idea that war isn't really fought for noble ideals. It's a racket, a cynical, incredibly profitable business where a tiny group of insiders get rich while almost everybody else pays the price, in blood, in money, in tears.
Now, here's the twist that makes this whole thing so powerful. The guy who wrote this wasn't some pacifist or politician. Nope. He was Major General Smedley Butler, a two-time Medal of Honor recipient. At the time he retired, he was the most decorated Marine in U.S. history. I mean, this guy spent 33 years inside the very machine he was now calling out. So, who's actually footing the bill for this racket, according to Butler? Well, he breaks it down into two devastating costs, the human cost and the financial one. And he argues both are paid almost entirely by the soldiers and their families. First, let's talk about the ultimate price. Butler mentions talking to a chief surgeon at a veterans hospital who told him something staggering. The mortality rate among World War I veterans was 3 times higher than for guys who stayed home. So for these soldiers, the war didn't just end when the shooting stopped. It kept taking its toll for years. And to make sure this isn't just some dry statistic, Butler talks about what he saw with his own eyes. He wasn't just quoting numbers, he was walking the words. He called these veterans destroyed men, the living dead. These were supposed to be the best of the nation, and now they were just broken by war. And we're not just talking about physical wounds here. He paints this absolutely horrifying picture of the mental toll, describing men who just couldn't readjust. He wrote about one hospital where 1,800 young men were kept in pens. Some of them, he said, no longer even looked human. Their minds were just gone. This, Butler says, is a massive part of the bill for the racket. Okay, so that's the human cost. But what about the money? While all these industrialists were making a fortune, the soldier on the front line was getting what Butler sarcastically called a large salary of just $30 a month. But here's where it gets even crazier. That $30, it basically disappeared before they even saw it. Butler breaks it down. Half of it went straight to their family. Another $6 went to so-called accident insurance. And then, he says, they were pretty much forced into buying Liberty bonds. When all was said and done, they were left with less than $9 a month for risking their lives. So, right, if the soldiers are paying this huge price, someone's got to be cashing in. And that brings us to the other side of Butler's racket, the people making the profits. And man, this just perfectly illustrates the contrast Butler was talking about. On one side, you've got the soldier, sleeping in muddy trenches, literally getting shot at. On the other, the banker, sitting in a nice, comfy office. When the soldier comes home, maybe wounded and definitely jobless, he's forced to sell his Liberty bonds for quick cash and maybe gets $84. But the banker, who Butler claims was manipulating the market, swoops in, buys him up cheap, and later sells him for $100 or more. So this is the real hocus pocus, as Butler called it. He argued that the big shot financiers could easily drive down the price of government bonds. This would scare people, especially those desperate returning veterans, into selling low. Then, those same financiers would help create a boom, drive the price right back up, and cash in. But Butler wasn't just about pointing out the problem. Come on, he was a Marine. He had a plan of attack. He lays out these 3 pretty radical steps that he believed would totally smash the war racket for good. His plan was, super direct. It was designed to hit the racket right where it hurts, in the wallet and in the halls of power. So let's break down his 3 steps. Okay, his first idea is a real bombshell. Take the profit out of war, period. He proposed that a month before any young men could be drafted, the government would first have to conscript all the capital and industry. That means everyone from the CEO of a weapons factory to a senator would be drafted to earn just $30 a month, same as the guy in the trenches. His logic? If nobody can get rich off it, the desire for war just evaporates. All right, step 2 is all about who gets to decide. He called for something called a plebiscite, which is just a direct vote. But here's the brilliant twist. The only people who should be allowed to vote on whether or not to declare war are the people who would actually have to go and fight it, not some 76-year-old factory owner. Butler believed that if you're not risking your life, you don't get a say. And his third and final step? Basically, redesigned the entire military so it could only be used for defense. He proposed a law saying the Navy can't go more than 200 miles from the coast, and the Army can never, ever leave American territory. His reasoning was simple. If your military can't go abroad, it can't be used to start a war for profit somewhere else. So Butler wraps up his whole argument with this really passionate, urgent warning, looking back at World War I and what he believed were the real reasons it was fought. He asks you to think about this. Back in 1916, President Woodrow Wilson gets re-elected, and his whole slogan was, "He kept us out of war." But then, just 5 months later, boom, America is in the war. The American people hadn't suddenly changed their minds, so what did? Butler's answer is just one word: money. He alleges that the Allies basically told the US government, look, if you don't jump in, we're going to lose. And if we lose, we can't pay back the billions of dollars we owe your bankers and manufacturers. He claims that was the real reason America went to war. And that brings us to his final, explosive conclusion. It's just 4 words, a parting shot from one of the most celebrated warriors in American history. It's raw, it's powerful, and it's a deeply challenging message that kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Nearly a century later, has anything really changed?